I'm honestly surprised Xenoblade got any games after the first, considering how much of a pain in the ass Nintendo was being about it 15 years ago, where they absolutely refused to localize it for the longest time, and apparently even stopped it from being shown at E3 2011 because they weren't planning on selling it. Boy am I glad we don't live in that timeline. However, they did eventually smarten up and allow Nintendo of Europe to do the localization, hence why everyone's British. If you want to know more about Xenoblade 1's development, then check out my massive video I did on it. But anyway, I'm sure anyone who played Xenoblade back when it came out was pretty content with finally getting it, especially those that participated in Operation Rainfall. However, the series would get a bit more recognition a few years down the line as Shulk was thrown into Super Smash Bros. 4, which is how I learned what Xenoblade is, and I'm sure many other people are in that same boat. 2014 was sort of a renaissance for the series, as about a month before the Shulk reveal, Xenoblade X got a new trailer, and it looked pretty impressive for a Wii U game, although it was described more as a spiritual successor to Xenoblade 1 rather than a sequel. Also, in the same month it launched, there was also the port of the first game on 3DS. And the train just kept on a-rollin' because 2 years later during the Nintendo Switch presentation, Monolith Soft had their next game geared up, and it was a lot more stylized than their previous projects, so nothing really gave away that it was Xenoblade. Then his name shows up like a jump scare, but surely that doesn't mean, well, I'll be damned. Despite Xenoblade X not being a big seller, the Mad Lads at Nintendo greenlit an actual sequel. Now you may have had the same question I did when I first got into the series, which is why did this get the big 2 slapped on it instead of X? Well, Takahashi said it's due to following a more story-focused approach like Xenoblade 1 as opposed to Xenoblade X's exploration-driven axis. Thankfully, the sequel was actually allowed to show up later at E3, unlike its predecessor, and would be our first time hearing the English dub, which sounds as Xenoblade as ever, with plenty of English accents. We would also get a better look at the characters, who are what inspired the new anime-like style, because Monolith wanted them to be much more expressive, and by golly are they. This trailer was mainly story exposition with little gameplay aside from White Boy running. Luckily, Nintendo held a demonstration showing 40 minutes of uncut gameplay, which is a very interesting watch in retrospective because you can see old versions of the HUD, an unused menu option, along with a placeholder MIDI version of a song. I'm not going to talk about the combat until a bit later, so sorry for blue-balling you like this, but anyway, the next trailer would air at the September 2017 Direct and was quite the beefy boy at over 8 minutes long. It was pretty much just an overview of the world and combat, however, it would finally get its release date of December 1st. At this point, I had played and given up on Xenoblade 1 because it was too complicated for my young dumb brain, so I didn't even think about giving the sequel a chance. In hindsight, I should have kicked myself in the balls, but I'm no longer big stupid, I promise. A lot of the other marketing was just recapping things we already knew, aside from the end of the Xenoblade 2 Direct where they announced an expansion pass with post-launch content. The most intriguing one being at the bottom, which we'd later find out was Torna the Golden Country, a large-ass DLC that you'll have to stick around for me to talk about in detail because I like blue-balling you. Monolith Soft unfortunately couldn't have all hands on deck for Xenoblade 2 because a little game called Breath of the Wild came out earlier that year, which Monolith Soft's dedicated support branch was helping with, but it wasn't enough, so a lot of staff that would have been developing Xenoblade 2 were tasked to help Nintendo, leaving only around 40 people to see the project through, which led to them outsourcing a lot of character models. It's extremely impressive how a relatively small team was able to create something so beautiful and expansive. Granted, the image quality isn't that great, but I was able to look past that and soak in the beauty, and hopefully this video will introduce some of you to its beauty. So, without further ado, welcome to Xenoblade Chronicles 2! So before I get into the story without spoiling anything, it's important to note that just in case Xenoblade 1 doesn't interest you but this one does, then feel free to jump in because you don't need to know anything about the first game. There's some references and the ending will hit a little harder, but that's about it. Anyway, story time. Rex is a salvager who lives on a Titan, the same as everyone else in all rest, though you quickly find out that the real estate is literally dying. Just like those house prices, am I right? The 30-year-olds are gonna get a kick out of that. Anyway, skip forward a bit and Banna gives Rex a job, and if Future Connected is anything to go by, then Bannas aren't trustworthy, but I believe in second chances. Regardless, Rex accepts and meets his fellow companions who don't give the most welcoming entrance.
It should be easy enough to make sure.
What? Nothing really happens until we reach the end of the ship where Rex meets Boobs and she tells you about how she wants to reach Elysium and needs your help, so she lets him touch her chest. Yeah, so the opening few chapters don't leave the greatest first impression, and that's putting it lightly. There's a few poor line reads, which is no fault of the actors, since as the game goes on, you can tell they understand their characters more and give nothing short of great performances for a vast majority of the game, which leads me to believe that they just weren't given much direction and context for some scenes, like this moment where no one has any urgency that Nia is gonna die.
Then let's go. We can't let her get executed.
Indeed. This way.
Unfortunately, most of the women designs were made to invite a certain behavior, and there's the occasional moment where they're well aware of that and focus on women's assets, which is where a lot of the discourse for this game comes from, which is completely valid. But most of those scenes do serve a purpose for the characters and story. They're not just to be like, ooh, there's tits on my screen! Torna also doesn't do the discourse any favors, since you meet him early on and he does nothing for the plot aside from bring his fetishes into it, and it honestly sucks that Poppy is stuck with him. She deserves far better. But, if you can get to Araya, which is a bit into chapter 3, then that's when things start gelling together nicely, and then from then on, you're in for one of the best stories gaming has to offer in my opinion, because despite the lightheartedness of the opening chapters, Xenoblade 2's plot gets pretty depressing. The weight of the world is put on Rex's shoulders the literal moment he awakens the Aegis, since word spreads quickly and everyone wants a piece of that cake. Like, no matter where you go, there's just someone who wants to take her, and things start to get really dire when you bump into the main antagonists, who are super strong, cool, badass, a little gay for each other but will never admit it, and want to annihilate the entire world by killing God essentially, but they need the Aegis to open the way to Elysium, so you'll be confronted by them many times. Although the fight choreography is the best in the series and some of the coolest shit I've seen, so it's kind of worth the ass beating. And the way they intertwine dialogue during fights just ups the choreography to another level. However, Rex's optimism never wavers no matter how hard he gets knocked down. But that optimism and his overconfidence is also his downfall, as it puts the team in danger sometimes because he just wants to keep pushing onward to Elysium no matter what. Speaking of the team, they all come from different backgrounds, like being related to the emperor of a country or being a kitty cat. Definitely an unlikely group of people, but they each have their own reason for joining the journey to Elysium, even if it's as simple as they want to see what happens. And for the most part, no one is shoved to the sidelines. Everyone feels important to the story, and most have backstories that got me even more invested in the characters. They also go through their own arcs, like Rex learning how to deal with interpersonal relationships. Be prepared to feel love, sadness, and maybe even betrayal. Genuinely, this story hits pretty close to home for me for reasons that I can't get into because spoilers, and it's such a shame that the beginning is what it is, since a lot of the game isn't like
How may I be of service, master?
that. So like, give it another shot if you feel like it. Or don't. More Kino for me. Your epic journey will take place on a plethora of huge-ass titans that are all just aching to have their holes explored. Each of the titans offers a different biome to explore, from the lush grasslands of Gormott to Mor Ardane's mechanical wasteland, and even Canada. The scale of these titans is nothing short of impressive. Much like the first game, you'll feel pretty small compared to most things around you. However, what really stands out is the grandeur of the towns. They're easily some of the best in gaming, and even from a distance, the scale of them is astounding. But once you set foot in any town, that scale becomes even more prominent, and not just from the actual size. Plenty of shops and NPCs fill the paths and go about their day. The vibes are also immaculate, as you get to hear some great songs as you run around the towns, and when night falls they become a lot more chill and calm, with the music reflecting that as well. The level design is also masterful. There's stuff to find in every nook and cranny, like chests. That's so fucked up. Tons of collection points, or maybe just a wonderful view, which I'll never complain about because this game is pretty, and the way these titans interconnect with each other is really what sets Xenoblade apart from any other game I've played. And 2 does this the best, where if you simply want to get to a lower part of a titan, then there's enough opportunities to just and voila, you're there. Okay, maybe not to that extreme, but my point still stands, as there's little drops you'll be able to do, and it just adds a bit of extra freedom that I enjoy and makes everything in the world feel intentionally placed. Also, with enough creativity, you can absolutely descend your way down some places, which again just adds that level of freedom to exploration. And while you're running around these areas, you get even more fantastic music composed by Ace, Kenji Hiramatsu, Monami Kyoto, and of course Yasunori Mitsuda, each of which fits the vibe of the environment environments or towns very well and makes running around just that much more enjoyable. There's also a heap of genres ranging from grand songs and some choirs, to some cozy songs, eerie sounding songs, and the old factory song, which I don't know the genre to describe it, but I hereby dub it as mechanical synthwave. On top of all of that, you also get 2 beautiful songs with Jenber doing the vocals, who sounds wonderful and squeezed enough tears out of me to feed all of Africa. You've probably heard Drifting Soul since its view count is double the amount the game has sold. Now who the fuck heard this and didn't buy the game? I just want to talk. Unfortunately, the exploration isn't all sunshine and rainbows, as it's bogged down by an unintuitive compass that gives a vague direction to go and the elevation of the mission, which led to some moments where I would head one direction and thought it was the way because number go down, but then I'd either be in a dead end or it'd eventually start taking me away from my objective. Furthermore, every titan is filled with various obstacles that can be cleared with field skills, which just me describing doesn't sound bad because it's a reason to go back to other titans and find new secrets, but the way it's done is just not good. Opening chests and killing elite enemies will more often than not drop a core crystal that randomly picks one out of many blades, some even being references to past Monolith soft games, and were all originally going to be 40 feet tall until Monolith realized that would blow up everyone's switches. Anyway, each blade can have different field skills and elements, some even having exclusive skills, but they need to be in your party for them to be activated, so then you gotta scroll through your blades to find the one that has the skill you need, and if you needed more than one, then you have to go back in and rebuild your team afterwards. Or you may have to level up skills in the affinity chart to have enough for the skill check, which is pretty tedious to do since every skill requires a specific thing to get unlocked, whether it be talking to Nopons, killing certain enemies, using their favorite pouch item, or doing a heart-to-heart. There's also merc missions which take a set amount of real world time to finish, however using blades that have the skills it asks for will reduce the time, and they're helpful because on top of giving contracts for shops and other rewards, they can also progress certain affinity chart goals. So if you have any blades you're not using but they have useful skills, you can just send them on missions every once in a while. Side quests are an improvement from the first game where a majority of them were just collection or hunting quests, and while that makes up a large portion of Xenoblade 2's side quests, they at least add some good flavor text to them. Although the collection quests can burn in hell because they're complete RNG whether you get the items or not, and there was multiple cases where I'd spend multiple minutes just trying to gather them. Some do have interesting storylines though, like a girl who envies someone for getting into a choir so she attempts manslaughter on them, or 2 kids getting in a spat because they're from Gorma and Morardain respectively, which are on the verge of war, or Torna calling someone a racist. There's also blade quests, which to the surprise of no one, give you a blade, but on top of that you get some wonderful stories with the blades, and Vess's in particular made me shed a tear. However, I would still recommend seeing them all, or if you don't feel like it, then at the bare minimum do Vess's. One change I do really like is being able to choose how many levels you want to go up when sleeping at an inn, so if you want to do a lot of side quests but not be over leveled, then you have the freedom to do so. Combat starts off slow, which is good so you can get eased into the gameplay, which Xenoblade 2 tries to do. Keyword is tries. The tutorials are real bad. They give you bad advice, like making pouch items seem like this insignificant thing, even though they're a key component to making early game combat better, and literally the starting area has one of the best pouch items. Why didn't you take me there? Also, they teach you things that you don't have access to at that point in time, like swapping characters, or teach you something that feels like you should have had way sooner. For instance, chain attacks, which you don't learn until hours into the game, despite having a full party a while before that. And the cherry on top of all of this is that you can't go back and review any tutorials, they just disappear into the ether once you read them. However, much like a lot of things in this game, the combat is still very fun even with its flaws. Monolith reworked how arts work, so now each face button is tied to an art and they'll recharge as you land auto attacks. Some arts have an extra effect like dealing more damage from the side or dropping healing potions. On top of that, they can have a reaction like blowdown or any of these 4 that combo together in this order. You can also upgrade all arts, which make them better. I know. Shocker. On the topic of upgrades, every character has a skill tree with mostly the same skills, and you should only focus on getting the ones that let you start fights with arts and allow you to cancel arts into arts. Combat definitely gets faster once you start utilizing pouch items that give a multitude of buffs for a set amount of time, and there's too many bad ones, so here's the 5 best in the game. Stutter stepping is also a helpful trick. All you do is cancel an auto attack animation by moving slightly forward, which racks up damage pretty fast. There's also a plethora of accessories to equip equip on everyone as well that also give a wide range of buffs, and that's it for the characters. Now it's time for blades. I know this is a fuck ton of information, but if they won't make a good tutorial, then I will, goddammit! Blades all have a role attached to them that doesn't really mean much because some attackers are good at healing, some healers are good at tanking, and so on. You can give blades chips which can raise any of these 3 stats. Don't listen to the auto attack, it's a liar. It increases all of a blade's damage. There are also aux cores that give more specific buffs like filling your party gauge with every critical hit. I wouldn't really recommend doing any blade build you want. From my experience, that just made the game harder on myself. Typically, whichever one of these stats is higher when pulling the blade is what you should increase with chips, and then you can still play around with an array of aux cores. Now as you use arts during combat, the special gauge will fill that when used will start a blade combo with whichever element you used, and in the top right you can see the combo routes you can take. And once you do a level 3 special, an orb of whatever element ended it will be put on the enemy and they'll be resistant to it until you start a chain attack which can entirely shift a fight into your favor, as you'll be able to burst the elemental orbs, which in turn also makes the chain attack go longer, meaning even more damage. And if it's still going even when you kill the unfortunate soul, then you'll be milking every drop of XP out of them, hence why I said earlier that you may not have to do side quests for levels, because all it takes is a good overkill on bosses to bring you up a couple levels. Speaking of bosses, each boss fight is very satisfying as you have to use everything against them, and it's usually very easy to see where you go wrong, like maybe they can shackle your blade so you pop on some shackle resist on your next attempt. And they're what made me realize how addicting the combat is, because you don't really get to use its full potential fighting regular enemies. It's still fun, don't get me wrong, just being able to use all of it against a big bad feels great because the further you progress, the stronger your characters get, which also complements the story sometimes. I also wanted to talk about things I dislike and like in the combat. First things first, the specials make it very engaging since each of them have a timed button press and or a button mash to deal extra damage. And each class also has different timing to cancel from an auto attack into an art, which keeps you on your toes throughout the game. One of my main problems with the combat actually has nothing to do with the combat itself, but instead all of the micromanaging it involves. Having to remember to put on your pouch items, open your menu whenever a blade gets a new skill, and making sure you fill your aux cores. That last one is the real problem child, like why do I need materials for them? Just let me equip them immediately. The extra step just feels redundant. Granted, there is pop-ups for the other 2 things, so those are easy enough to remember, but it happened quite a few times in the middle of a fight, so I just forget by the time it's over. 1 month before Xenoblade Chronicles 2 launched, Nintendo held a direct for all things you need to know about the game, and near the end announced an expansion pass that for the following year would drip feed content like new blades like Corvin, new side quests, and a battle mode. We'll get to you in a bit. Anyway, the new blades you can get from just talking to these fine Noppon and Argentum, and one for going back to Tora's house after chapter 4, and they're quite good, so I'd recommend grabbing them ASAP. The battle mode is very fun because you get to take on various combat challenges, with some having certain restrictions put in place. You also get some help from some familiar faces, and by completing the challenges you'll get Noppon stones that let you buy outfits for the characters. Unfortunately, they do use up an accessory or aux core slot, which is whatever, but I would have liked the option to only have the cosmetic on. Can't win them all, I suppose. But what you can win is being able to use Shulkin, Fiora, and Allrest once you beat the game and complete this challenge. And that's not all who will join you, because doing this challenge will let someone from the small game called Xenoblade X join you as a blade, and then this challenge gets unlocked and you'll be able to use Elma and Allrest upon completing it. If you don't care for the challenges and simply want the characters, you can turn on custom mode and crank your stats up and lower the enemies so you'll just breeze through them. Now, on to the real meat and potatoes of the expansion pass. Torna the Golden Country, which was developed alongside the base game, originally planned to be stuck between chapters 7 and 8 until Monolith decided to make it an expansion so they could make it larger in scope, and it managed to come out only 9 months after Xenoblade 2's release, along with getting a physical release of its own since it's basically a whole ass other game. Okay, I've blue-balled you long enough, now let's actually jump into the DLC. Torna is a prequel taking place 500 years before the base game, letting you see firsthand the annihilation of the aptly named Torna, but that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. There will be minor spoilers for the base game, so just don't listen to this part if you haven't played the base game, which, again, you really fucking should. It's really good! Sorry. On top of not only having a few familiar faces, we also get new protagonists, who are Hugo, Niall's ancestor, Adam, the driver of Mithra before Rex, and last but not least, Laura, who makes a badass entrance, and shortly after, we see her and Jin's unique fighting style of passing his weapon between each other. And after that little kerfuffle, hold on, enhance. Holy shit, we can review tutorials! There's also a handful of other quality of life improvements, like being able to see what collection points will give you as you approach it. Aux cores now come pre-refined. This must be what heaven is like. And since there's no gacha system, that means field skills are palatable now that you're given every blade you need. Since this was developed alongside the base game, it means the story doesn't feel shoehorned in and actually fits nicely as a prequel, although I find the overarching plot simple. You are just trying to find Malos the entire time, and Malos in Torna doesn't have really any motivation aside from the will of the divine. The highlight is all of the characters. You get to see Jin actually have a heart and care for those around him, and how he and Mithra got on before he turned all bad. Mithra also, while maintaining the same core traits from Torna to the base game, is pretty different. She's far more reckless and has no real attachment to those around her. A majority of the story is spent with the group just talking to each other, and there isn't much action until the final boss, then it's simply peak. However, that doesn't make the story boring, as it actually does wonders for the game's ending, which I won't spoil, but I got pretty attached to the characters. In the same vein as the story, what's an RPG without side quests? Not a good one, I can tell you that. Although I say that, and the side quests are the most controversial thing about Torna, so... While some side quests are fairly tedious, like having to track down Armus, to lighting lanterns, or my dreaded collection quests, most of them have storylines. For instance, reuniting a family, having to clean up litter for an old lady to enjoy her walks, only to find out Nopons were pranking ya. Whoa! Laura! You can't call them that anymore. And it's a good thing they are high quality in that regard, since at some points main story progress will be blocked until you reach a certain community level, which is the source of the main discourse for Torna, but honestly, I like it. I think it fits very well with the theme of partnership and togetherness, and doing them only made the already great ending just that much better, so I'm glad I took the time to do most of them. Combat is largely the same, but with two pretty big changes. You can now switch between the driver and blade whenever this gauge fills, which adds a bit of strategy because you either want to change to make use of their switch art, or to let the other character recover their HP. The other difference is how blade combos work. Now each level of a super will place an orb on an enemy instead of having to finish the entire combo for one. And that naturally makes it feel much more streamlined and quicker, which works for Torna since it's a shorter experience, and thank God I don't have to talk your ear off about how the game works again since there's a fucking tutorial! Still not over that, sorry. Exploration, much like everything else, is mostly the same, except you only get 2 titans to explore, although Torna has quite a bit of biome diversity, so it keeps feeling fresh. And of course, new areas means new music that just makes you even Gormot's theme got remixed into a swingy jazz tune. The new areas range from a forest to the secluded Boneway and the Great Break Sand.
This is new.
This place would make a perfect base of operations.
Well, I guess I know why it's called Break Sand. Stuff you do around the Titan is also identical to the base game, aside from miasma that give new collection points. Speaking of, they serve a big purpose, in that the resources are used for pouch items and key items that give permanent passive buffs like running faster or more XP from enemies. One mystery that kept me exploring was just running around and finding a slate piece with not a clue what it did, until I stumbled upon this and my curiosity was fueled for my entire playthrough. But I'm not gonna tell you what's behind that seal, just so your curiosity is also piqued if you decide to play it. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, oh what a fantastic game you are. Despite the pretty vocal minority that want you to believe this game is the spawn of Satan, it to me is a gift from heaven. And this is gonna sound cliche, but I mean it when I say this game changed my life. I played it during a pretty rough part in my life, and it taught me how to cherish my time with everyone around me and how to let go of people, which I was struggling big time with, having lost basically all of my friends during lockdown for reasons that I don't want on the internet. But it helped me get over that, and I'm pretty happy with the person I am today. And you know, I struggled a lot writing this video, specifically the story portion, because I was torn between doing light spoiler stuff to make the game actually sound interesting, or not spoiling anything. I went with the former because I just couldn't make it sound interesting while being vague, and I guess that's just something I'll have to improve on with my writing, so maybe someday I'll be able to do that. I do really hope my video helped sell someone on Xenoblade 2, or gave anyone the push to try it if it's in your backlog. I really cherish this whole series, and it sucks that this game gets the rep it does online because it doesn't deserve it. So what if it has a few weird and bad moments? The game is 50 hours long, and a vast majority of that time is fucking peak, so you'll end up forgetting about the bad anyway. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Like I said, I struggled writing it, so it would mean a lot if you left a like so more people can see it, and the more people that see it, the higher chance I'll get constructive criticism, which is what I really want. I want my videos to be better, but I'm not sure how to go about it. I have plenty of other welcome to videos as well if you need a bigger sample size to critique me. Anyway, I've been rambling on for too long, so I'll see you all in my next video. I don't know when that'll be because I usually take some time off after doing a big video like this. I'll also probably be deep into Xenoblade X, so you can look forward to that video sometime soon. But that does it for now. Bye-bye!
Of eternity, the final day has come to an end. It's gone